Well, everyone, today is another very happy day. We get to talk about another gaming console, which is none other than the Xbox One X. Now, this is, again, as I mentioned before, one of those consoles that are just mind-blowing in so many different ways. And I feel like a lot of people may be looking at this console, the Xbox One X in particular, and thinking to themselves, what is the point of even owning this console? You may be seeing all these people owning the Xbox Series S or X, and you might be feeling like you're left out or whatever the case is. But I can definitely tell you from what I've seen, from my history and all that stuff, that it typically takes many years from, the older generation console to be fully ported over to the next gen. A lot of these game developers still know that, a lot of people still own the Xbox One X, so they're not going to be making any proprietary games for the next generation of consoles just yet, because nobody's going to buy them because more people still own the older one. So even if you own an Xbox One X, you are still set for so many years. I would say at least for the next 3 years, you are still going to be getting a majority of the games for both of these consoles. Yeah, there's going to be games coming out for the next gen that are already out, but still for a majority of them, the One X is still here and it's still going to be getting a ton of games for it as well. Now, this console actually originally came out not that long ago in 2017, and this was pretty much the rival, I guess, to the PlayStation 4 Pro, but this was a solid console. This thing had a lot of capability, and I'm actually more of a fan of the Xbox One S. I feel like that console just looked so much better. I think the Xbox, One X is also a very good console as well, but regardless, this was the powerhouse of a console. This thing, really whatever Microsoft had at the time, they just threw in it, and that was great. And when I look at something like this, and even like the Series X or S, this console still has a lot of capability for sure, and I'm actually really happy how well this console has been able to hold up for the last couple of years. Now, looking around the console, this is, again, one of the strong suits about this type of consoles, is that when you look at this type of console, and you look at the previous consoles like the PlayStation 3s, and even like the Xbox 360S and the 360E, these consoles, the Xbox, One and the PlayStation 4s, they look so premium and they look so minimalistic and modern that even 10-15 years from now, we're going to be looking at these consoles and still thinking to ourselves that these are seriously some really good looking consoles, as we already are. Now, with the Xbox One X, you can see it's a very minimalistic design. There really isn't too much going on with it. You have pretty much the plastic build as far as I know around it. On the front of it, you do have that Xbox power button, which looks pretty good. And you have, the disc ejects, little option. And you also have a single USB port on the front of this device. Now, on the back of it, there is still some actually really good port selections on these type of devices. And as I mentioned before, going from a One X to an actual, Series S or X, you were kind of losing out on some things, which is very interesting to me, which I would have never known. So on the back of the Xbox One X, you can see that we pretty much have, the two USB ports, which is great. We have, the Ethernet port, which is also really amazing. We have the AC adapter, which powers up the console. But another amazing thing that we had on the One X that we really didn't have on the newer generation of consoles was that we actually did have two HDMI ports, which is crazy in my opinion. Now, you may be wondering, what is the point of this? You're only going to use one HDMI port. Well, the point of this is that you can actually go ahead and plug in a totally different console, TV, Chromecast, whatever you want to plug in. You can plug that into the other HDMI port within your Xbox. And instead of using two HDMI ports on your TV, you can just use one and stream whatever you're trying to stream from your other device through your Xbox One to your TV or your monitor. And as I mentioned before, this is another awesome thing that you had the capability of having on this type of device. Now, was it the craziest thing ever? No, I'm probably overhyping it a little bit. But when you look at this type of console and you look at the newer ones, I'm just like, why did they remove that? They should have just kept it in. But again, there's nothing we can do about it, but it would have been really awesome had the next generation of consoles still maintain that type of capability. So with the Xbox One X, I think it's seriously awesome, and I'm really happy about the whole entire design, and it still looks pretty good. Now, the controller of this console, I'm sure as most of you know, as most of you've seen by now, this was another solid controller. Going from the Xbox One X controller now to the Series S and X, there really isn't that big of a difference. They are roughly around the same thing. I thought there was going to be more of a difference, but it's really not. You charge through USB-C now instead of micro USB, but this controller still feels good. whenever you play any games or anything, it's pretty good. I think the 360 obviously had the best controller, but this one is still a very solid controller for sure. Now, internally on the Xbox One X, they did some really big revisions for this thing. So it did have an upgraded GPU, which was awesome. You could spec these things out for 12 gigs of RAM, which was crazy. I mean, that's a lot of RAM to have for a specific game, and that was really awesome. And a lot of the Xbox One games that were originally made for the Xbox, One could be played up in 4K, so they could be upscaled for them, which was really awesome. So with this type of game, you had the AMD's FreeSync capability, and apparently Microsoft said that you could get up to 31% improvements in performance, which is pretty insane to me, because when you go from just the same iteration of console, but going from the end bottom tier to the top tier performance model, you're getting that much better performance in games, which is awesome. So for sure, when it comes down to it, this was a very solid performing console, and it just makes me think back to the Xbox 360s and the PlayStation 3s, the original ones, and then going up to the Super Slims and all the 360E and S and those ones. There were some really big improvements. Performance was another pretty big improvement, but these type of consoles with the One X and the PS4 Pros were solid in terms of the performance for sure. Now, on top of that, the gaming library, as I've mentioned before, is so solid. I mean, first of all, not only do you have the ability of still playing used games if you want to buy them online or buy them through eBay or GameStop or whatever, you can still buy them online, which is great. You can also actually buy the online games themselves. You can download them straight from the Microsoft Store or the Xbox Store from your device, and you don't have to go anywhere for those. They'll literally just be downloaded on your Xbox, which may sound like something that happens every day and it sounds like a nonchalant kind of thing, but it's actually a pretty big deal, because when you think about it, a lot of these developers aren't really going to go for those CD driven type of sales that much anymore, because you look at the Xbox Series S's and the X's, they're really trying to focus more so, I think, on the digital version of downloading the games rather than going to Best Buy or somewhere to actually get the game. So that's a massive thing to keep in mind, mostly because with a console like the Xbox Series S, it doesn't have a disc slot. So this makes me think that with an Xbox One X, a lot of these games that are going to be coming out are still going to be available for both consoles. So let's say I go ahead and make a game today. Let's say I call it whatever, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, okay, I only want to make it for the Series S and X. If I look at the market share, there's literally no people who own the Series X and X compared to the Xbox Ones. A lot more people own the Xbox Ones. So I'd rather port the game over to both consoles rather than just having it out on the next gen console, in my opinion. And this is no exception. With something like an Xbox One X, you are still going to be getting a huge amount of games coming up, but there's also a huge amount of games that have already been released. So this thing, you're never going to get bored of it. As long as you have the money to buy the games, you're going to be set. I think there were also some modding capability behind the Xbox One X too, but I'm not going to talk about it too much because I don't want to get this video demonetized. But I can definitely tell you the Xbox One X had a seriously solid gaming library, and as I mentioned before, no matter what you're going to do with it, it's going to be able to play those games perfectly fine. It's performance heavy. There's just so much, life still in this console. And as I mentioned before, I think the number one thing people are going to look at is, why would I buy an Xbox One X when the next generation of consoles are already out? And for those people, I would probably say you don't have to buy the Xbox One X. You can even buy an Xbox One S and still have a really good time. These consoles are not made to be just, thrown away after the next consoles come out. This console is still going to be here for a long time. And I currently still own the One S and I currently own the Series S and X, and I can definitely tell you, even with the UI, there's not even that big of a difference. The UI is almost identically the same on both. I think the PS4 Pro to the PS5 was a bigger jump in terms of an overall change, but I'm happy with the Series X and S. I feel like those consoles are very powerful, but you would be surprised how similar both the Xbox One X and the Xbox Series S and X are, to be honest. So at the end of the day, I will definitely tell you an Xbox One X is still a very solid console to have. It's not perfect, but for the most part, for the amount of, price this thing has depreciated in the used market and stuff, it's almost like, if you have the money, go for it. If you don't have any of these consoles, then it's still a no-brainer. You're going to get a lot of life still from this console, whether you believe it or not, if that's just my opinion. But if you want to pick one of these up, like I stated, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. But that's really pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section as well. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count. So it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly, everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.